Human soldier picked the weakest alien princess. As his reward, the reason will astound you. The sun was setting on the barren landscape of the planet Vorton, casting long shadows over the craters and scars of the battlefield. The air smelled of burnt metal and ozone, remnants of the massive fight that had just taken place. Sergeant Marcus Kane, leader of the 12th Special Forces Battalion, stood near the edge of the battlefield, looking out at the alien landscape. The mission had been a success, but at a high cost. His unit had lost men, and the enemy had fought harder than anyone expected. Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow, his body aching from the grueling fight. His combat armor was dented, and his rifle had seen better days. Yet despite the battle's toll, there was a sense of accomplishment. They had done it. The war was far from over, but this victory would go down in history. His unit had successfully defeated the elite forces of the Orcs Empire, a race of highly advanced aliens known for their brutal conquests across the galaxy. As Marcus surveyed the battlefield, he was approached by Captain Sarah Reynolds, his second-in-command. She was a fierce and pragmatic leader, someone who had earned Marcus's respect over the years. She didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "Sergeant, the council's ready for us," Sarah said, her voice steady, but there was a hint of curiosity in her tone. Marcus nodded and followed her to the command ship, a massive vessel hovering just above the scorched earth. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. High-ranking military officers and diplomats from the Human Alliance gathered, their faces grim. The war was nearing its end, but the cost had been high. No one knew what the Orcs Empire would do next, but they couldn't risk letting them regroup. The leader of the council, Ambassador Holt, a tall man with sharp features and a calculating gaze, addressed the group. "Sergeant Kane, Captain Reynolds," he said, his voice cool but filled with authority. "You've brought us victory today. We will never forget the sacrifices made by your men, but there's more to this than just victory. You are aware of the terms of the peace treaty, yes?" Marcus stood straight, nodding. He had heard the rumors. After every major battle, the victors were granted a special reward, a token of recognition for their bravery. This time, however, the prize would be different. Instead of a simple medal or decoration, the soldiers who had fought in the final battle were being given the chance to choose one of the alien princesses from the Orcs Empire. These princesses were more than just royalty. They were symbols of the Empire's power, and each one possessed extraordinary abilities. Some were gifted in combat, others in diplomacy, and a few held ancient knowledge that could change the course of the galaxy. Marcus had heard the whispers among his men. The soldiers were eager to claim their reward. Some wanted a princess who could provide them with power or prestige, while others hoped for an ally who could grant them favor in future conflicts. The choice was a coveted one, and it was clear that many of Marcus's comrades were already thinking of which princess they would pick. But Marcus's mind was elsewhere. He had always been more focused on the mission than on personal gain. The idea of a reward didn't excite him the way it did for others. Yet, as the council meeting progressed, he felt a strange sense of obligation, as though the weight of the decision was pressing on him. "Sergeant," Ambassador Holt continued, "the council has agreed to let you make your choice. You fought the hardest, and your leadership ensured our victory. Choose wisely. The future of humanity could depend on it." Marcus glanced around the room. His fellow soldiers and officers were eager, some already making mental lists of the princesses they would choose. They were all warriors in their own right, but none of them had the depth of experience that Marcus had. He had seen the worst of war, the destruction, the loss. He understood that power wasn't always about brute strength. It was about knowing when to act and when to step back. "Thank you, Ambassador," Marcus said, his voice steady but carrying an air of finality. "I will choose." With those words, the room fell silent. Everyone waited for Marcus's decision, their eyes fixed on him. He knew this moment would be remembered in history, but the pressure of making the right choice was heavy. He had to pick a princess who would not only represent humanity's victory, but also help secure the future of the galaxy. As the diplomats and military leaders moved to prepare for the selection ceremony, Marcus turned to Sarah, his closest ally in this war. "Do you think I'll be judged for my choice?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet but full of thought. Sarah looked at him, her expression unreadable. She had always been supportive, but this was a decision he had to make alone. She didn't offer advice or try to sway him. "I think you'll choose what's right," she said simply. "You've always known when to make the tough calls." Marcus nodded, his mind racing. He had no interest in choosing a princess based on power or prestige. He wasn't like the others who wanted someone to help them gain favor or wealth. He was looking for something more, something that would help humanity in the long run. As the hours passed, the ceremony finally began. Marcus and his comrades were ushered into a grand hall where the Vierks princesses were lined up, each one more stunning and regal than the last. They stood tall, their eyes glowing with intelligence and power. The other soldiers couldn't help but stare in awe, but Marcus felt a strange pull in a different direction. He walked past the first few princesses, noting their beauty, their grace, and the aura of power that surrounded them. Each one was impressive, each one capable of bringing something unique to the table. But Marcus's mind was set on something different. In the far corner of the room stood Princess Lyra, the weakest of them all. She was frail, almost fragile, with pale skin and delicate features. Her eyes, however, shone with a quiet intensity, a depth of knowledge that Marcus couldn't ignore. She didn't look like the others. She didn't stand tall and proud like the rest of the Vierks' royal family. Instead, she seemed to shrink into herself as if the weight of the galaxy was too much for her to bear. As Marcus approached her, the whispers from his fellow soldiers became louder. "Why her?" they muttered. "She's nothing like the others." But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Princess Lyra. She wasn't just another trophy to be won. There was something hidden beneath her fragile exterior, something that called to him. It was as if the universe itself had guided him to this moment, and he knew that choosing Lyra was the right decision. The room fell silent as Marcus reached Lyra, and she looked up at him with those deep, soulful eyes. For a brief moment, it felt as though time had stopped. There was an understanding between them, a silent connection that went beyond words. "I choose her," Marcus said, his voice steady and resolute. The room erupted into murmurs, shock and confusion spreading like wildfire. Why had he chosen the weakest of the princesses? What could she possibly offer that the others could? But Marcus didn't care about their opinions. He knew what he had to do. And as he looked at Princess Lyra, he couldn't help but wonder if his choice would change the course of history in ways no one could ever expect. The days following Marcus's choice felt like a whirlwind. The council had been stunned by his decision, as had the soldiers. No one understood why he had picked Princess Lyra, the frailest among them, over the others who were strong, skilled, and held great influence. Whispers echoed through the halls of the command ship, soldiers questioning Marcus's judgment. Many believed he had made a mistake, choosing the weakest princess, someone who seemed to be more of a liability than an asset. Marcus, however, paid little attention to their murmurs. He had made his decision, and there was no turning back. In the quiet moments when he found himself alone, he thought about Lyra, trying to understand the depth of his choice. Something about her, the way she carried herself despite her weakness, had struck a chord deep within him. There was a quiet strength in her, a strength that others couldn't see. Princess Lyra was assigned a suite in the officer's wing of the command ship, far from the luxurious quarters the other princesses had been given. She didn't seem to mind the small room nor the simple furnishings. Her eyes always seemed distant, lost in thoughts Marcus couldn't yet understand. She rarely spoke, and when she did, her voice was soft and fragile, almost as if she was afraid to be heard. Despite the quietness, Marcus could sense a different energy when he was around her. It wasn't the same as the others, those who were loud, confident, and full of ambition. Lyra had a calm presence that didn't demand attention, yet it drew Marcus in. He spent more time with her than he had with anyone else, though he never fully understood why. She wasn't the conversation partner he'd expected. She never discussed politics, strategy, or the war. Instead, their conversations were fleeting, small exchanges about the weather, the ship, or even the food they ate. One evening, as the stars outside the window twinkled against the dark canvas of space, Marcus sat beside Lyra in her quarters. The silence was comfortable, not awkward. He had learned over the days to accept it. Lyra was not one for small talk, and he had come to appreciate that about her. "Do you miss your home?" Marcus asked quietly, looking at her. It was a simple question, but something about her made him feel like there was more to it. He wondered if she felt like a stranger on this ship, cut off from everything she had once known. Lyra turned her gaze toward him, her eyes reflecting a depth he hadn't noticed before. There was sadness in her look, but also a hint of understanding. She paused, as if carefully choosing her words. "I don't remember much of it," she replied softly. Home, it feels like a lifetime ago. My people abandoned me, you know. They didn't see any use for someone like me. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but the weight of her words hung in the air between them. Marcus felt a tug in his chest, an unfamiliar ache. "Why did they abandon you?" he asked, not knowing why he had never asked her this before. She hesitated, then looked out the window as if searching for something in the vastness of space. "I was weak. They thought I couldn't be a ruler, couldn't lead. They believed that I wasn't strong enough to hold the throne, that I wasn't worthy." Her eyes met his, filled with an emotion he couldn't place. "So they left me behind. They thought it would be better to get rid of me than to have me as a reminder of their failure." Marcus was struck by her words. He had assumed Lyra was simply a prize, a token of war, something to be used and then discarded. He had never considered that she might have been more than what she appeared to be. She was royalty, after all, a princess. But she wasn't like the others. He didn't know what to say at first. How could he respond to someone who had been abandoned by her own people simply because she wasn't strong enough? His mind was swirling with questions, but all he could do was nod in understanding. He didn't know how to help her, but he knew that he wasn't going to abandon her like the Vierks had. Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself drawn to Lyra more than ever. He began to spend hours with her, talking in the quiet of her room or walking the corridors of the ship. She never asked for anything, never made demands. There was a humbleness in her that contrasted with the other princesses who were accustomed to luxury and attention. But despite her seeming fragility, Lyra's presence was magnetic, and Marcus felt a strange need to protect her, to keep her safe from the harshness of the world around them. The more he got to know her, the more he realized that there was something different about Lyra. It wasn't just her frailty or her past, it was something deeper. He couldn't quite put it into words, but he began to suspect that there was more to her than anyone knew, something hidden beneath the surface. One evening, as they sat in the observation deck, Marcus found himself asking a question he had been avoiding for a long time. "Why don't you fight back?" Lyra turned her gaze to him, her face unreadable. "What do you mean? You've been through so much. You've lost everything, your family, your throne, your people. And yet you don't fight, you don't seem angry, upset, or even sad about it. Why don't you fight back? Why not show them all who you really are?" She was silent for a long time, staring out at the stars, as though she was contemplating the question. Marcus didn't expect an answer immediately, but when she finally spoke, her voice was calm, as if she had made peace with the answer long ago. "I've never needed to fight with my hands," she said. "The power I hold, it's not something that can be seen with the eye. It's something that's buried deep inside me, something that my people didn't understand. They wanted strength, physical strength. But there are other kinds of strength. Strength in knowledge, strength in patience, strength in understanding." Her words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He had always believed that strength was defined by the ability to fight, to defeat an enemy on the battlefield. But here in front of him was a woman who had been cast aside because she wasn't seen as strong. Yet she carried something far more powerful than physical strength, something he couldn't yet comprehend, but he knew it was there. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus continued to spend time with Lyra, learning more about her and the depth of her wisdom. She spoke little about her past, but there were moments in the quiet of the night when her eyes would seem to gaze far beyond the stars, as if she could see something no one else could. It was during these moments that Marcus realized that the Vierks princess wasn't just a fragile woman who had been abandoned by her family. She was the key to something much greater. There was a secret hidden within her, a power that no one, not even Lyra herself, fully understood. And as the days passed, Marcus began to feel a growing sense of unease. There was something about the way Lyra spoke, the way she seemed to sense things before they happened, that made him believe that her true purpose had not yet been revealed. One evening, after an especially quiet dinner, Lyra stood by the window, staring out into the darkness of space. "I'm not what they think I am," she whispered. "I was never just a princess. I was never just a weakling. There's more to me than they know." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he watched her. He had no idea what she was talking about, but he knew that whatever secret she held, it would change everything. And for the first time, he wondered if his choice had been about more than just helping her. Perhaps it was fate that had led him to choose her. And now, as the weeks went by, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to change in ways no one could anticipate. The atmosphere aboard the command ship had grown tense in the weeks that followed Marcus's decision to choose Princess Lyra. The other soldiers and officers were still talking, still whispering behind his back, questioning his judgment. But none of it mattered to Marcus. He knew he had made the right choice. The days passed slowly. Lyra remained distant, lost in her own thoughts. Marcus spent more and more time with her, but their conversations were becoming increasingly sparse. She didn't seem to want to share much, and Marcus couldn't quite figure out why. She never spoke about her past, and she avoided discussing anything related to the Vierks Empire or her royal family. Yet, Marcus could feel that there was something more to her, something deeper, a hidden truth she was not yet ready to reveal. One evening, as the stars outside the window painted the void of space, Marcus stood at the door of Lyra's quarters, his hand resting lightly on the doorframe. She had been unusually quiet lately, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He had never seen her so withdrawn. She had always been gentle, calm, even kind, but lately there was a sadness in her eyes that made his chest tighten. He knocked softly, the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. It took a moment, but then the door opened, and Lyra stood there, her expression soft but unreadable. "I was hoping you'd come," she said, her voice low. She stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Marcus nodded and walked in, glancing around the small but elegant room. The walls were decorated with delicate alien art, the kind of pieces that spoke of a time long past, of a culture that was now lost. Lyra had kept herself to herself, almost as if she were still hiding from the world that had once been hers. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice casual, though he couldn't help the concern that laced his words. Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to a small table and picked up a delicate crystal pendant, holding it between her fingers as if lost in thought. "I don't know," she murmured. "I've spent so many years in silence, in hiding, that I forgot what it feels like to have someone care enough to ask. I'm not used to it." Marcus took a step closer, his heart going out to her. He had known she was alone in the galaxy, but hearing it from her lips made it all the more real. She had no one, no family, no kingdom. She had been abandoned, left to drift through the stars with no one to hold her, no one to guide her. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said softly, his voice unwavering. He didn't know why he felt such a strong connection to her, but the more time he spent with her, the more he realized that he didn't want to see her suffer in silence. Lyra looked at him, her pale blue eyes searching his face as if trying to see if he truly meant what he said. "You don't know what it's like," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. "To have everything taken from you, to be nothing, to be so fragile." Her eyes dropped to the pendant in her hands, and for a moment there was a distant, faraway look in them, as though she were staring into something only she could see. "I'm not what you think I am," she continued, her voice trembling. "I'm not just some weak princess. I was made to hold something, to be something much more than this." Marcus was taken aback by her words. What did she mean? Was there more to her than just being the frail alien princess who had been abandoned by her people? He stepped closer, his curiosity growing. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. "What is it that you're holding inside?" Lyra hesitated, her fingers clenching around the pendant. She looked at him, and for the first time, Marcus saw something beyond the sadness and the frailty. There was a flicker of something powerful in her eyes, something ancient and wise that made him take a step back. "I was born to be a vessel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A vessel for a power greater than any of you could understand. The Vierks Empire created me to hold a consciousness, an ancient intelligence that had been dormant for centuries. They knew that I was meant to carry it, but they didn't know how to unlock it. And when they realized what I was, they abandoned me. They left me behind, thinking that I was nothing more than a failure. But I was never meant to be a ruler. I was meant to be something else." The weight of her words hit Marcus like a blow. He had suspected that Lyra was more than she appeared, but hearing it from her, seeing the pain in her eyes, made it all the more real. She wasn't just a princess, a trophy to be claimed by the victor. She was the key to something much bigger, something that could change everything. "You're not weak," Marcus said, his voice filled with awe. "You've been carrying something all this time, something powerful." Lyra nodded, her eyes closing as if the weight of her own words was too much to bear. "I've been carrying it my whole life," she said, her voice strained. "I've been fighting it, holding it back because I didn't know how to control it. But now I can feel it, pushing at the edges of my mind. It wants to come out to take over, and I don't know if I can stop it." Marcus didn't know what to say. He had heard of things like this before: ancient alien forces, powerful intelligences, forces that could reshape the galaxy. But to hear it from Lyra, to see it in her eyes, was something else entirely. He could feel the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. If what she said was true, then Lyra wasn't just a princess. She was a vessel for a power that could alter the fate of the entire galaxy. "We need to find a way to help you," Marcus said, his voice determined. He had always been a soldier, always been someone who was willing to fight for what he believed in. But now he was faced with something he had never imagined: an ancient force inside a fragile, seemingly helpless princess. Lyra shook her head, her face twisted with uncertainty. "I don't know if you can help me. I don't even know if I can help myself. The consciousness inside me, it's waking up. I can feel it pushing against me. It wants to take control, to use me as a vessel for its will. I don't know if I can stop it. And if I can't, I'm afraid of what it will do." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "We'll figure it out. You're not alone. You don't have to face this by yourself." For a moment, there was silence between them. Lyra's gaze softened, and for the first time since they had met, she seemed to trust him, to believe in him. "You truly mean that?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. "I've chosen you, Lyra. I don't know what's inside of you, but I know one thing: you're not alone. I won't let this power take over you. We'll find a way to control it together." And in that moment, something shifted between them. The connection that had been growing between them, the bond that had formed over time, became something deeper, something unspoken. They both knew that the road ahead would be dangerous, that the power Lyra carried was far beyond anything they could understand. But Marcus knew, in that moment, that he would stand by her no matter what. He had chosen her for a reason, and he wasn't about to back down now. Lyra gave him a small, uncertain smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus smiled back, his heart swelling with determination. "We'll get through this together." And with that, they turned their gaze back to the stars outside the window. The darkness of space stretched out before them, vast and unknown. But for the first time, Marcus felt a sense of hope. They were in this together, and together they would face whatever came next. The weeks that followed were some of the most challenging Marcus had ever faced. Every day he spent hours trying to help Lyra control the strange and powerful force inside her. At first, the knowledge she carried, something ancient, something beyond comprehension, was a vague and uncertain presence, but over time it began to grow stronger, more active. There were moments when Lyra would fall into deep trances, her body trembling as though the consciousness inside her was trying to break free. It scared her, and it scared Marcus too. Lyra would tell him little about the power she carried, speaking only in cryptic phrases, or sometimes not at all. It was clear to Marcus that she was afraid of what might happen if the consciousness took over completely. Yet despite her fear, she was determined not to let it consume her. She wasn't weak, not in the way the others thought. She was fighting with everything she had to keep the ancient power at bay. There were nights when Marcus would sit beside her for hours, watching over her, making sure she wasn't alone. During these nights, she would talk to him more openly, but even then, her words were fragmented, as if she were piecing together a puzzle that didn't quite fit. She spoke about the past, about the Orcs empire, about how they had tried to control her, shape her into something she was. She spoke about the consciousness inside her, the one that had been placed there before she was born, its purpose unknown even to her. "I was never meant to be a ruler," she said one night, her voice trembling as she sat by the window, staring into the vast expanse of space. "I was born to hold something, to be the vessel for something powerful, but they didn't understand. They didn't know what they were doing. They thought I was just weak, just another princess who couldn't fight, couldn't lead. But they were wrong." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He had always believed that strength came from what a person could do, how they could fight, how they could lead others. But Lyra was different. She had no need to fight. Her strength lay in the power she carried, in the wisdom she had yet to fully understand. It was a strength he couldn't see with his eyes, but he could feel it, a quiet energy that hummed beneath her skin. They had tried everything: meditation, focus, deep breathing techniques, even isolating Lyra from the rest of the crew in the hopes of giving her space to deal with the force inside her. But nothing seemed to work. The power grew stronger each day, and the more Marcus and Lyra tried to control it, the more it pushed back, like a storm waiting to break free. One evening, as Marcus was walking down the corridor of the ship, he was stopped by Captain Reynolds. Her face was serious, more serious than Marcus had ever seen it. "Sergeant," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk." He followed her to her office, the door sliding shut behind them as she gestured for him to take a seat. "What's going on, Captain?" Marcus asked, his mind already racing. "I'm concerned about Lyra," she began, her expression unreadable. "She's not just a princess, and I know you know that. There's something more to her. The power she carries, it's dangerous. And I don't think we have much time before it gets out of control." Marcus sat up straight. He had known something like this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it all too real. "What do you mean, Captain?" he asked, his voice tense. "I mean that we don't know the full extent of what's inside her," Reynolds continued. "The Vierks Empire created her as a vessel for something that could reshape the galaxy. We don't even know what it is, but I can tell you this. It's not something we can control. And if it's allowed to fully awaken, it could destroy everything. We're playing with fire here, Sergeant." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had always known that Lyra was more than just a princess, but hearing it from someone like Captain Reynolds, someone who had seen the worst of war, made him realize just how dangerous the situation truly was. "I've been working with her trying to help her control it," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "But it's getting harder. I can feel it too. The power inside her is starting to push through, and it's not just the consciousness. There's something else, something dark. I think it's starting to take over." Reynolds nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I'm worried about. We need to figure out what's going on, and we need to do it quickly. The longer this drags on, the more dangerous it becomes." Marcus's mind raced. What could they do? How could they stop something so powerful, something that had been with Lyra for her entire life, something she didn't fully understand herself? He didn't know, but one thing was clear. They needed answers. "I'm not going to let this destroy her," Marcus said firmly. "We'll find a way, we have to." Reynolds gave him a sharp look as if weighing his words. "You're willing to risk everything for her, aren't you?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yes." She studied him for a long moment, then finally sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "All right, Sergeant. I'll do what I can to help, but you have to understand we're running out of time. If we don't find a way to control this power, it'll destroy us all." Marcus nodded, his jaw set with determination. He wasn't going to give up on Lyra. He couldn't. He had made a promise to her, and he intended to keep it, no matter what it took. Later that night, Marcus sat with Lyra in her quarters once again. She had grown quieter over the past few days, her thoughts increasingly distant. He could see the toll the internal battle was taking on her. Her once pristine appearance was now more worn, her movements slower, as if the weight of the power inside her was physically draining her. "I don't know how much longer I can fight this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus sat beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone, Lyra. I'm here with you. We'll figure this out, together." She turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "But what if it's too late? What if I can't control it? What if I lose myself?" "You won't," Marcus said, his voice firm but gentle. "You're stronger than you think. We just need to find the key, the way to unlock this power without letting it control you." Lyra shook her head, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I've tried everything. I've tried to control it, to keep it locked away, but it's getting harder. I feel like it's slipping through my fingers." Marcus thought for a moment. There had to be something they hadn't tried yet. There had to be a way to help her. He couldn't let her face this alone. "Maybe it's not about controlling it," Marcus said slowly, as if thinking aloud. "Maybe it's about understanding it. Maybe if we can understand what this consciousness wants, we can figure out how to keep it from taking over." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "You think that's possible?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But we have to try. We can't just keep fighting it. If we don't understand it, we'll never be able to stop it. And if we can understand it, maybe we can learn to coexist with it, control it without letting it control you." For a long time, Lyra said nothing. She seemed to be weighing his words, considering the possibility. Finally, she nodded, though her face was still filled with uncertainty. "All right," she said quietly. Let's try to understand it." Marcus smiled, gently relieved. "We'll get through this, I promise." And so, for the first time since the power inside Lyra had begun to stir, they began a new journey, one not of fighting, but of understanding. They didn't know where it would lead them or whether they would succeed. But for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt that there was hope. They had a chance. And that was all they needed. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus and Lyra continued their work in silence, determined to uncover the secret of the power that Lyra carried within her. The ship had become a place of quiet urgency as the time to act grew nearer. Every day, Marcus found himself more fascinated by Lyra, not just because of the power she held, but because of her resilience. Despite everything she had gone through, she never gave up. It was that strength, that quiet determination that had kept her going all these years. In the beginning, the task seemed impossible. The power inside Lyra, the consciousness, was vast and ancient, a force so old that even Lyra herself had trouble understanding it. The fragments of her memories, the ones she was able to recall, offered no answers. All she had were vague impressions, flashes of images that didn't make sense. But Marcus never stopped believing that there was a way to help her. He was sure of one thing: this was not a curse. It wasn't something to be feared. It was something that could be controlled. He just had to help Lyra see it. Every day, they meditated together. It was the only way they knew how to quiet the noise, the growing, pulsing energy that surged beneath her skin. They had tried every method known to human science and alien techniques, but none of them had worked. Now they were resorting to the simplest way they knew, reaching for something deep within. Marcus would sit beside her in the quiet of her room, helping her focus, keeping her grounded. It was during one of these meditations, after a long, silent pause, that Lyra spoke up. "I can feel it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's waking up again." "It's trying to reach me." Marcus didn't move, his gaze fixed on her. "Tell me what you feel," he said calmly, his tone gentle. He had learned to stay calm, to keep his voice steady. He knew that panicking would only make it worse. "It's like a shadow," she said. "A shadow that's always there, just out of sight, but I can feel it moving. It's growing. Stronger, it wants something. I don't know what, but it feels ancient. It's not evil, it's not good, it just is." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding. "You're not alone in this, Lyra. I'm with you, we'll figure this out together." Lyra's eyes closed tightly, her face tense as she fought to maintain control. Marcus watched her, feeling the weight of her struggle. It wasn't just her fight, it was his too. They were in this together. After a long silence, Lyra opened her eyes, her gaze meeting Marcus's. I think I understand now." Marcus leaned in closer, listening intently. "The consciousness inside me," she said slowly, "it's not just a force, it's a collection of memories. It's the sum of thousands of years of knowledge, but not just any knowledge. It's a guide. It's here to help, not to control. But the Orcs Empire, they tried to use it for their own gain. They didn't understand what they were dealing with, and I didn't either. But now I see. It's not my enemy, it's my inheritance, it's a part of who I am." Marcus felt a surge of hope. For the first time, it seemed that Lyra was beginning to understand the power inside her, not as something to be feared, but as something that was a part of her, something that could be used for good. "That's it," Marcus said softly. "You're not just a vessel for this power. You're connected to it, you're its keeper, its protector, and you have the power to control it, to use it as it was meant to be used." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, though she didn't let them fall. "I've spent so long trying to run from it. I didn't want this power, Marcus. I never asked for it, I thought it was a curse. But now I see that it's a gift that I've been given to protect, to guide, not just for me, but for everyone." The realization hit her like a wave, a powerful, overwhelming understanding. The ancient consciousness inside her was not there to destroy. It was there to offer wisdom, to guide the galaxy, to prevent the chaos that would come if the Orcs Empire, or any other empire, used its power for selfish gain. The key was not controlling the power, but allowing it to guide her, to shape her into the person she was meant to be. Marcus felt a sense of awe as he watched her, a quiet peace settling over him. He had always believed in her. He had always believed that she was more than what the galaxy had seen her as, a fragile, weak princess. He had always known that there was something hidden inside her, something that could change everything. "I'll help you," Marcus said firmly. "I'll help you use this power, use this knowledge. We'll make sure it's used for good, to stop the war, to protect the galaxy from anyone who would try to use it for their own gain." Lyra nodded, her face softening with gratitude. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know what would have happened without you." "You don't have to thank me," Marcus replied with a smile. "I'm not giving up on you, I never will." As they continued to work together, the power inside Lyra seemed to settle, becoming more of a companion than an adversary. She began to feel it, guiding her thoughts, helping her see things that she couldn't see before. It was as if the knowledge she had been carrying for so long was finally starting to make sense. She could feel the galaxy's pulse, the rhythm of the stars, the quiet hum of life in every corner of the universe. But with that knowledge came a responsibility, one that neither Lyra nor Marcus could ignore. The power she carried was vast. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could change the course of history in ways they couldn't predict. The galaxy was already at war, and the Vierks Empire, though weakened, was still a threat. There were others who wanted to use the knowledge that Lyra carried for their own purposes, and those forces could not be allowed to succeed. It was then that Lyra made a decision. She stood before Marcus, her expression resolute. "I know what I have to do," she said. "I need to go to the heart of the Vierks Empire. I need to speak to their leaders to show them that this power isn't something to be feared, but something to be used wisely. It's the only way to end this war." Marcus felt a pang of fear in his chest. "It's dangerous. The Vierks Empire won't just listen to you." "I know," Lyra said quietly, "but I have no choice. This power is mine to wield and it's mine to protect. I have to do this for the galaxy. I have to convince them to stop fighting, to work together. If we don't, we'll all be destroyed." Marcus stood there for a long moment, his mind racing. He had always known this day would come, but the thought of losing Lyra, of her going into the heart of enemy territory alone, was terrifying. But he knew that this was her destiny. This was why she had been chosen. "I'll go with you," Marcus said finally. "I'm not letting you face this alone." Lyra smiled, a soft, grateful smile. "You've already done so much for me. You've been my strength when I had none. I'm not alone, not anymore." And so, together, they made their way to the heart of the Vierks Empire, prepared to face whatever came next. The journey ahead would not be easy, and they didn't know if they would succeed. But one thing was certain: they would face it together. The galaxy had been shaped by war, by power, and by conflict. But with the ancient knowledge that Lyra carried inside her, and the unwavering bond they shared, they had a chance to change it all. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape.